Hello, classmates. My name is James Dunham, and I chose to do my book talk over The Great Alone by Kristin. Here is a plot overview of The Great Alone. Ernst Albright, a former POW, comes home from the Vietnam War a changed and hardened man. When he loses yet another job, he makes an impulsive decision. He will move his family north to Alaska, where they will live off the grid in America's last true frontier. 13-year-old Lenny, a girl coming of age in a disorderly and confusing time, caught in the riptide of her parents' passionate, stormy relationship, dares to hope that a new land will lead to a better future for her family. She is desperate for a place to belong. Her mother, Cora, would do anything and go anywhere for the man she loves, even if that means following him into the unknown. At first, Alaska seemed to be the answer to their prayers. In a wild, remote corner of the state, they find a fiercely independent community of strong men and even stronger women. The long, sunlit days and the generosity of the locals make up for the Albrights' lack of preparation and dwindling resources. But as winter approaches and the darkness descends on Alaska, Ernst's fragile mental state deteriorates and the family begins to fracture. In their small cabin that's covered in snow and blanketed by 18 hours of night, Lenny and her mother learn the terrible truth. They are on their own, in the wild. There is no one to save them but themselves. Here are a few key passages that I felt pulled me closer into the book. Dad swept into the kitchen and cranked up the transistor radio that sat on the Formica counter. A scratchy rock and roll song came through. Dad laughed and pulled Mama into his arms. Lenny heard his whispered, "I'm sorry, forgive me." "Always," Mama said, holding him as if she were afraid he'd push her away. Dad kept his arm around Mama's waist and pulled her over to the kitchen table. He pulled out a chair and said, "Lenny, come in here." Lenny loved it when they included her. She left her spot on the sofa and took a seat beside her mother. Dad smiled down at Lenny and handed her a paperback book, The Call of the Wild. "You'll love this, Red." He sat down across from Mama, scooted in closer to the table. He was wearing what Lenny thought of as his big idea smile. She'd seen it before. Whenever he had a plan to change their lives, and he had a lot of plans, selling everything and camping for a year as they drove the big spur highway, raising mink, what a horror that had been, selling American seed packets in Central California. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded up piece of paper, slapped it on the table. "You remember my friend Bo Harlan?" Mama took a moment to answer. "From Nam?" Dad nodded. To Lenny, he said, "Bo Harlan was the crew chief and I was the door gunner. We looked out for each other. When we were together when our bird went down and we got captured. We went through hell together." Lenny noticed how he was shaken. His short sleeves were rolled up so she could see the burn scars that ran from his wrist to his elbow, in ridges of puckered, disfigured skin that had never tanned. Lenny didn't know what had caused his scars. He had never said, and she had never asked. But his captors had done it. She had figured out that much. The scars covered his back, too, pulled into the skin, into swirls and puckers. "They made me watch him die," he said. Lenny looked worried at Mama. Dad had never said this before. To hear the words now unsettled them. He tapped his foot on the floor, played a beat on the table with his fast-moving fingers. He unfolded the letter, smoothed it out, and turned it so they could read the words. "Sergeant Albright, you are a hard man to find. I am Earl Harlan. My son Bo wrote many letters home about his friendship with you, and I thank you for that. In his last letter, he told me that if anything had happened in that piece of shit place, he wanted you to have his land up here in Alaska. It isn't much, 40 acres with a cabin that needs fixing, but a hard-working man can live off the land up here, away from the crazies and the hippies and the mess in the lower 48. I don't have a phone, but you can write me to the Homer Post office, and I'll get the letter sooner or later. The land is at the end of the road, past the silver gate with the cow skull, and just before the burnt tree at mile marker 13. Thanks again, Earl. Mama looked up. She cocked her head, gave a little bird-like tilt as she studied Dad. This man, Bo, has given us a house? A house? Think of it, Dad said, lifted out of his seat by enthusiasm. A house that's ours, that we own, and a place where we can be self-sufficient, grow our own vegetables, hunt our own meat, and be free. We dreamt of this for years, Cora. Living a simpler life away from all the bullshit down here, we could be free. Think of it. Wait, Lenny said. Even for Dad, this was big. Alaska? You want to move again? We just moved here. Mama frowned. But there's nothing up there, is there? Just bears and Eskimos. He pulled Mama to her feet with an eagerness that made her stumble and fall into him. Lenny saw the desperate edge of his enthusiasm. I need this, Cora. I need a place where I can breathe again. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to crawl out of my own skin. Up there, the flashbacks and the shit will stop. I know it. We need this. We can go back to the way things were before Nom screwed me up. And now I would like to share a little bit of information about the New York Times best-selling author, Kristin Hanna. She is an award-winning and best-selling author for more than 20 novels, including the international blockbuster The Nightingale, which was named Goodreads' Best Historical Fiction Novel of 2015 and won the Covert People's Award for Best Fiction in the same year. Additionally, was named the Best Book of the Year by Amazon, iTunes, BuzzFeed, and the New York Journal. I binge read this 440-page book over 4 days during spring break. There is no doubt in my mind that Kristin Hanna is one of the strongest, most talented writers I have ever read. This book was very different than the types of books I normally read. I went into the book expecting it to be more of a life story, but what took me by complete surprise was how much of an epic love story it turned out to be. I felt so deeply and profoundly moved by it. It spans nearly a complete lifetime and portrays a raw, honest view of life. Absolutely loved it. During the middle, I found myself needing to put the book down and walk away for bits of times as my emotions got the best of me. And by the ending, it was everything I had hoped for. I highly recommend this book as a top favorite. I am looking forward to starting another book by Kristin Hanna called The Nightingale. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.